"You'll embarrass us. Please don't come." That's what my son said to me on the phone, his voice as cold and flat as a winter lake. He wasn't asking me to skip a stranger's event. He was telling me to stay home from my own grandson's university graduation. The betrayal hit me so hard, it felt like my world stopped spinning. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, staring at the wall. Not loudly, but something inside me had cracked all the way through. The room was unnaturally quiet, and my hands, resting in my lap, seemed to show every vein more clearly than ever before, blue, like lines on an old map they don't print anymore. For weeks I'd been looking forward to that day. I'd even bought a new navy blue dress, simple, elegant. I chose it because it looked clean and honest, a quiet statement that said, "I know I'm not fancy, but I came with pride." Instead, I sat in that chair for a long, long time, his words echoing in the hollow space he'd created. "You'll embarrass us." He didn't say I wasn't welcome. That would have been too honest. Instead, he framed it like a concern for me, for the atmosphere, for the other guests. "It's a big venue, Mom. There will be faculty, people from Jenna's job. You'll be more comfortable at home, honestly." Comfortable? I remember a bitter laugh rising in my throat. I'd never been comfortable. Not when I cleaned offices at night and packed school lunches at 5 a.m. Not when I worked 3 shifts at the bakery through Christmas so he could have new cleats. Not when I gave up the house with a garden because he and Jenna wanted to start out right, and I just happened to have savings. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, "All right." That was 2 days before the graduation. The next day I cleaned the house like a storm had passed through me. I scrubbed baseboards, polished doorknobs, washed curtains. Anything to stay moving, anything to keep from crying. On the morning of the ceremony, I took out the navy dress and ironed it. I brushed my gray hair smooth, pinned it back like I used to when I was still working. No makeup, no perfume, just me. And I left the house. The university was across town. I remembered walking him into those very buildings years ago when he was unsure if he belonged there. He clutched my arm that day and I told him, "You're smart, Sam. You've earned your place." I believed it then. I still do. What I hadn't expected was that the place he earned would one day feel too good for me. I parked 3 blocks away. I didn't want to risk anyone seeing my old car. It groans when I turn the wheel too tight. I walked slowly, my knees protesting every step, but I got there. I stood near the edge of the courtyard where the guests were gathered, laughter, expensive suits, elegant dresses. Jenna was greeting someone, her heels impossibly high for the pavement. Sam was beside her, looking every bit the proud father. I didn't go near them. I waited until the procession moved inside. I followed the stream of people and found a seat in the very last row of the auditorium. No one noticed me. I didn't expect them to. The dean spoke. Then the valedictorian. Then row by row the students rose and crossed the stage. I searched for his face. Michael. He was near the end. Tall, clean-cut, with that polite smile I'd seen in so many photos. They said his name and applause filled the room. I clapped once quietly. Then something strange happened. He turned, diploma in hand, eyes scanning the crowd. And for 1 second, just a flicker, I thought he saw me. Then his gaze moved on. Maybe it wasn't me he was looking for. Maybe it was Jenna's parents or someone from the firm. I stayed seated until the room began to empty. Then I stood, walked back out. Same stiff walk, same slow breath. The sun was lower now, painting everything in gold, like it wanted to soften the truth. I reached my car, sat behind the wheel, and I let my hands shake for a minute. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the card I'd brought, the one with the small check inside. I tore it in half, and I drove home. By the way, if you're still with me, still wondering how this story unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There are more unbelievable truths coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. He wasn't always like this. When Sam was little, he had the gentlest heart. At 5, he used to sneak into my bed in the middle of the night just to wrap his arms around me. "I had a bad dream, Mama," he'd whisper, pressing his face into my back. He always called me Mama when he was frightened or tired. I remember once when he was 9, he came home crying because a boy at school said his shoes looked cheap. I'd gotten them on sale at the hardware store. Money was tight that year. The bakery wasn't doing well, and the old Dodge needed a new transmission. But I'd still wrap those shoes in bright paper and told him they were strong like construction boots like his father used to wear. "I don't care if they're not cool," he told me later that night, sitting on the kitchen counter with a glass of milk. "I just want you to be proud of me." I told him I was proud every single day. When his father died, Sam was only 11. I thought the world would split in half from the pain, but it didn't. Just got quieter. I went back to work the next morning. Early shift at the bakery, then nights cleaning office buildings. I stopped wearing makeup, stopped reading books for fun. There was no space left for softness. But I never missed a parent-teacher meeting. Never skipped a school play. Never once forgot to pack his lunch. His friends' mothers wore perfume and had French tips. I wore sensible shoes and smelled like bleach. Still, he always looked for me in the crowd. Always ran to me after. He loved that I worked at the bakery. In middle school, he'd come in after classes, sit behind the counter, and steal lemon bars when he thought I wasn't looking. "You're going to get me fired," I'd joke. "You own the place," he'd laugh. But things shifted when he started high school. It wasn't sudden. It never is. It began with little things. A correction here, a sigh there. "Mom, can you not wear that jacket when you come to school?" Or, "Don't bring the plastic bag. Just hold the food." Then came the silences. Then came Jenna. I never disliked her. She was polite, ambitious, always dressed like she stepped out of a catalog. But she never looked me in the eye. Always that tight smile, that half nod. I could tell she saw me as someone temporary, decorative, a placeholder in Sam's old life. When they got married, I offered to pay for the photographer. She smiled, said thank you, and then upgraded the package without telling me, sending me a bill 4 times the amount I'd offered. I paid it. I told myself it wasn't worth making noise. Noise embarrassed Sam. He became quieter with me after that, more formal, like we were distant cousins who shared a bit of blood and not much else. He still called on birthdays, still came by for Thanksgiving. But it was all surface. No late-night calls. No, "Mama, I'm tired." Just emails about escrow and loan documents. I blamed myself. Maybe I made him too soft. Maybe he needed that distance to become who he was. Maybe I should have sent him to that out-of-town school when they offered the scholarship. But back then he cried at the thought of leaving me. I didn't want him to suffer. I wanted him to feel safe. I thought I was giving him roots. But maybe I only gave him a weight he didn't want to carry. I'm not a fool. I know how I look in their world. I don't have an education. I don't have networks. I still keep my savings in a manila envelope hidden in a box of flour. Old habits from years when trust in banks wasn't a luxury I could afford. But I also know this: I raised a man. I paid for his first car. I gave him a home when he couldn't afford rent. I covered the deposit on their first house. And when Jenna was pregnant with their second and they didn't know how they'd manage with just one income, I sent them a check without asking for anything back. And I've never, not once, been thanked in a way that felt real. I didn't go to graduation for attention. I didn't go to embarrass anyone. I went because my grandson was getting his diploma, because he'd worked hard, because I was proud, because I'm part of this family, even if they've done their best to forget that. I thought maybe if I just stayed in the back, didn't talk to anyone, didn't stand out, maybe it would be okay. But the thing is, silence never protects you. They still find ways to make you feel like a mistake. The silence after the ceremony was worse than the phone call. No one called to ask if I'd been there. No one mentioned seeing me. Not Sam. Not Jenna. Not even Michael. My grandson, the one who crossed that stage with his head high and his mother's posture. I waited that night, thinking maybe he'd send a text, just a thanks for coming, Grandma. But nothing came. I sat at the kitchen table, the one with the deep scratch from when Sam dropped a mixing bowl years ago. I ran my fingers over that mark for a long time. It was the only scar in this house I never tried to cover. My house is quiet now. Has been for years. No more music in the evenings. No more flour-dusted shoes by the door. No more boyish laughter bouncing off the walls. Just me, the ticking clock, and the low hum of the fridge that sounds too much like breathing when you're alone. The next morning, I folded the dress I wore to the ceremony and placed it back in its plastic wrap. I didn't cry. I haven't cried in years. Not since Sam's father died. Not since I signed over the deed to help with his mortgage. Tears, I learned, are currency too. You spend them fast when you're young. But at my age they're more precious. You keep them sealed behind the ribs. Still, something pressed at my chest that day. Not grief exactly, but the weight of knowing you've been quietly pushed out of your own story. Later, I got a call from Carol, my neighbor and oldest friend. She'd heard about the graduation from the florist. Jenna had ordered 6 centerpieces, all in white and gold. "Didn't know you were heading out yesterday, Nance," she said. "Was it lovely?" I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. "They didn't want me there," I said. I went anyway, sat in the back, saw my boy walk across the stage like I wasn't alive. She was quiet for a beat. Then she said the words I didn't know I'd needed. "You didn't go for them. You went for you. And I'm proud you did." Carol's like me, been through her own battles, lost her husband to cancer, raised 3 boys, 2 of whom don't call unless they need something notarized. She knows what it means to be useful but invisible. She's been telling me for years, "Nance, you have to stop giving away parts of yourself like free samples at the grocery store. People take them, smile and move on. They never buy the full product." I used to laugh when she said that. Now I just nod. That afternoon, I opened the hallway closet. It's where I keep all the documents. Not in any kind of system, just piled in folders, envelopes, paper clips that have rusted around the edges. I pulled everything out and laid it on the dining table. There was the mortgage cosign from 6 years ago, the $25,000 check I wrote when Jenna decided to take a sabbatical to focus on the kids. Receipts from the new windows they installed. I remembered Sam saying, "You'll feel safer knowing the boys are warm, won't you?" Of course I had nodded. What else was I supposed to do? I flipped through each page slowly, methodically, like I was studying for an exam. These papers weren't just numbers. They were proof of how much I tried to stay close, how many times I paid for proximity, for a thank you, for inclusion. And all of it had been met with less than silence, with polite distance, with strategic forgetting. When I got to the envelope marked Michael Education, I stopped. Inside was a check I'd never mailed. $5,000 for textbooks, I'd told myself, or whatever he needed when he started university. I hadn't told Sam about it. I wanted it to be from me. Just me. I held the check up to the light. My handwriting looked shakier now than it used to. That bothered me. Not the age, the fact that I was still trying. That night I made a decision. I didn't call anyone. Didn't announce it. I just sat with it. Sometimes the biggest choices in life come not with fireworks, but with a quiet nod to yourself across a worn-out room. I would stop. Stop giving. Stop chasing their attention. Stop paying for a seat at a table they clearly didn't want me at. But I wouldn't do it with bitterness. No. That would mean they'd won. I would do it with grace. With quiet, final clarity. And for the first time in years, I went to bed without checking my phone for messages that never came. It was Michael who saw me first. I was halfway down the back stairwell, about to slip out the side exit, when I heard a voice echo, "Grandma." I froze. My hand was on the metal railing, and I could feel how cold it was against my skin. That word, Grandma, hadn't been spoken to me in weeks. Not by him. Not since our last phone call where he'd been distracted, polite, distant, in the way young people get when they've already been told a version of you by someone else. I turned slowly. He was 2 steps above me, in a black robe and that absurd square hat perched crookedly on his head. He looked taller than I remembered, older somehow, but the eyes were the same, wide and unsure. "You came," he said. I nodded. "Back row. Didn't want to cause a scene." He smiled, but it was tight around the edges. "Dad said. I mean." He stopped himself. I waited. "He told me you weren't feeling up to it, that you didn't want to come." My stomach dropped, but I didn't let it show. I just gave him the smallest shrug. Felt up to it after all. Michael stepped down slowly, 2 stairs at a time, until we stood level. We hadn't been this close in months, maybe longer. He used to visit me on weekends, remember? Back when he still needed help with essays or when his laundry piled up. I taught him how to make pie crust, how to iron a dress shirt without leaving a shine on the fabric. Now he was watching me like I was something unfamiliar. "You should have sat closer," he said. I wasn't invited to sit closer. That hung in the air like dust in sunlight. He looked away first. "I didn't know," he said. I believed him. We stood in silence for a while. Down the hall, music started playing from the reception room. Laughter, camera shutters, champagne corks. I could imagine Jenna's voice, crisp, rehearsed, calling for group shots. Sam standing beside her, nodding, smiling, being exactly who he needed to be. Michael looked down at his hands. "They said you didn't like crowds, that it would be too much for you." "They've said a lot of things about me," I replied. "But no one asked." Another pause. "Then come to the reception." It wasn't a command. It was a request. Raw and simple. I shook my head. "Your father wouldn't want that." "I don't care." It hit me so hard I almost missed it. "I don't care. Not he'll be fine or I'll talk to him." Just that simple defiance. I hadn't expected it from him. Still I smiled softly. "It's your day. Go be the star." He looked at me like he wanted to say something more, but I was already turning back to the stairwell. At the door I paused. "You looked good up there, Michael." Proud, like someone who came from strong stock. He flushed that sweet, embarrassed flush I remembered from when he was 12 and spilled jam on the church pew. "Come by sometime," I added. "Pie's better when it's not eaten alone." Then I left. I didn't cry. Not then, not even in the car. But when I got home and stepped into the quiet kitchen, the tears came fast and full. Not because I was hurt, but because for the first time in years I'd seen a crack in the wall. And it hadn't come from me. He came to the house the next day. No call, no warning, just the low hum of tires on my gravel drive. The thunk of a car door. Then footsteps on the porch I painted myself 2 summers ago. I knew it was him before he knocked. I always know the sound of his walk. Clipped, impatient. Like every second he spends waiting is a second stolen. I didn't hurry to the door. Let him stand there. Let him feel the quiet. When I opened it, he didn't smile. Didn't say hello. He just stood there in a pressed shirt and that same polished look he'd picked up somewhere between grad school and Jenna's ambition. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." I stepped aside. "Do we?" He didn't answer. Just walked in like it was still his house. Like he'd never left laundry on the couch. Never eaten cereal straight from the box while I folded invoices at the table. He sat. I didn't offer him tea. "You were at the ceremony." "Yes." "You didn't tell me." "You told me not to come." He blinked, but only once. "That's not what I said." "You said I'd embarrass you." "That's not how I meant it." "Then how did you mean it, Sam?" He didn't answer right away. He looked around the kitchen. The same place he used to sit with scraped knees and peanut butter on his chin. Now he looked like a guest or worse, a client. "I just thought," he sighed. "Jenna's parents were there, her boss, a lot of important people. And I wasn't important." "That's not what I said." "But it's what you meant." Still no tea. Still no apology. Mom, look, he said, softening his voice like I was a confused child. You don't understand how these events are. There's a way things are done. Appearances matter. Jen is very involved in the board. I raised you, I said low and even. Alone. I packed your lunches, paid your tuition. I didn't care how things looked when I was scraping together coins to keep the heat on. I did what mattered. That's not fair. I leaned forward. No. What's not fair is sitting in the back row of your grandson's graduation, while his father pretends she doesn't exist. He stared at me. Then for a second I thought I saw something shift. Maybe guilt. Maybe shame. Maybe just the shock of being spoken to without deference. I just didn't want drama, he said. You didn't want me. That's not true. Then why am I always the part you try to hide? He didn't have an answer. I stood up. My knees popped. A reminder of how long I've been bending for him. I'm not your problem, Sam. I'm not an inconvenience or a liability or a piece of old furniture you keep in the shed just in case. I'm your mother. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's your burden to carry. He stood slower. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. Silence. Then I'll talk to Jenna. We'll figure something out. I nodded, but not in agreement. Just acknowledgement. He still didn't understand. He moved toward the door, then paused. Michael said he saw you, that you talked. We did. I don't want him caught in the middle. I met his eyes. Then don't put him there. He left without another word. I watched his car disappear down the street, taillights fading into the midday sun. Still no tea. Still no apology. But also no retreat. Carol brought lemon cake. She always does when things go bad. Not store-bought, her own recipe. Heavy on the zest, light on the sugar. She knows I don't like things too sweet anymore. You get less tolerant with age, I once told her. Of sugar, of silence, of people who talk down to you in your own kitchen. She laughed then. She didn't laugh today. She came in without asking, like she always does, set the cake on the counter and looked me over. You look tired. I am. Tea. I didn't make any. I will. And just like that, she moved around my kitchen like it was hers, filled the kettle, pulled down the chipped cups, sat across from me once the water boiled. So, she said, he showed up. I nodded. Let me guess. Said you misunderstood, that it wasn't what he meant. He said appearances matter. Carol snorted. They do, but so does truth and dignity and having a spine. She poured the tea and handed me a slice of cake. Eat. I didn't touch the fork. Just stared at the steam curling out of the cup. I'm tired, Carol. I know. I feel like I've been running after him my whole life, trying to be whatever he needed. A roof, a safety net, a blank check. And now, I looked at her, the woman who's known me through 2 deaths, a broken bakery oven, and a flooded basement. The only one who's ever said what others won't. Now I want to stop. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just sipped her tea and said, about damn time. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind moved through the oak trees. A dog barked somewhere down the street. I could hear the hum of life continuing without needing to be asked. Carol put her cup down. You still pay their mortgage? Yes. Utilities? Yes. Private school for Michael's brother? Yes. She shook her head. You're funding the lives of people who won't let you be seen. That landed hard. It wasn't cruel. It was just true. I don't know how to stop, I whispered. Yes, you do, she said. You just don't want to feel like the bad guy. I don't want to punish them. This isn't punishment, Nance. It's correction. You've been underwriting their comfort at the cost of your own value. It's time you close the tab. I swallowed hard. I went through the papers yesterday, I said. All of them. Checks, bank wires, cosigns. It's hundreds of thousands. And I can't even remember the last time he asked how I was feeling. That's because he doesn't think he has to. I looked down at my hands. Do you think he ever loved me? I mean, really? Carol didn't answer right away. Then she said carefully, I think he loved you the way children love things that are always there. The porch light, the warm meal, the soft landing. But that's not the same as respect. I felt something crumble inside me. Not like breaking. Like an old dam finally loosening under pressure it was never meant to hold. I'm so tired of being useful. Then stop. I looked at her. It's not that easy. Yes, it is. You pick up the phone. You call the bank. You say no more. The kettle had gone quiet. The tea was cooling. Carol reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You're allowed to stop, Nancy. You don't owe them your whole life. And for the first time in years I started to believe that maybe she was right. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the windows cracked open, letting in the hum of crickets and the distant rush of wind through trees. The ceiling fan made its soft ticking sound. And every once in a while a car passed down the road. Nothing loud, nothing urgent, just the world continuing on. But I was awake. I was thinking about the file cabinet in the hallway, the one I've kept locked for years mostly out of habit. I thought about the documents in there. Some yellowing, some still crisp. Each one a receipt of a choice I'd made in the name of love, of duty, of motherhood. And I thought about what Carol said. You're allowed to stop. 6:15 I got up. Didn't bother with breakfast, just washed my face, tied back my hair, and walked barefoot to the cabinet. The key was still in the old mug I keep spare buttons in. I turned it slowly, like opening a door to something sacred. Inside were 12 folders, each labeled with my handwriting, S. Dalton Mortgage. Jenna Education Fund. Michael Birth to High School. Car repairs. Utilities. Health. Legal. Vacation advance. College loans. Household upgrades. Emergency transfer. Miscellaneous. That last one hurt most of all. I pulled them all out, carried them to the kitchen table, sat down. The table groaned under the weight, not of paper but of years. Years I'd said yes. Years I'd swallowed words. Years I told myself that giving was the only way I'd be allowed to stay close. I opened the folders one by one. There was the signed check for $40,000 to cover their down payment. A printed confirmation of a wire for $7,800 when their AC broke. Monthly autopays for their utilities. $422.33 for electric. $76 for water. I was paying for water I didn't drink. The tuition slip for Michael's little brother, $12,000 a year. I remembered how Jenna cried when she asked. He's so sensitive, Nancy. He doesn't do well in public schools. I nodded. I always nod when people cry. I stacked each document in a pile. Not to shame myself, just to see it all. To tell the truth out loud, even if no one was listening. At 8 a.m., I picked up the phone and dialed the number I knew by heart. First State Union, this is Trina. How can I help you? Good morning, I said, voice calm. This is Nancy Dalton. I'd like to make some changes to my account. Of course, Miss Dalton, what can we help you with? I'd like to cancel all automatic payments effective immediately. There was a pause. All of them? Yes, all of them. And is there a particular reason? No longer necessary, I said simply. I'm simplifying. Understood. I can put in the request now, but for full cancellation, we'll need your signature in person. I'll come in this afternoon. She confirmed the branch hours and asked if I'd need help reviewing any documents. I'll bring my own list, I said. When I hung up, my hands were steady. I looked around the kitchen, sunlight slanting across the counter. The smell of lemon cake still faint in the air from Carol's visit. The silence in the room no longer felt oppressive. Felt like mine. I went back to the folders, now thinned out, reordered. There were still decisions to make about the house, the car, the investments I'd barely touched. But something had already shifted. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping someone would wake up one day and say, "We've taken too much." I was the one who would decide when it ended, and it ends now. The bank smelled like paper and plastic. Not the kind you notice right away. The kind that lingers in places where people come to negotiate their futures. Contracts, signatures, money that moves without a face. I hadn't been inside in nearly a year. Last time was to authorize a new debit card for Jenna. Hers had accidentally expired. I remembered standing at the counter, her text coming in. "Can you ask them to expedite it? I've got a conference this weekend." "No, please." "No, thank you." Just expectation. Entitlement in 7 words. This time I didn't bring my phone. I wore my beige cardigan, the one with buttons shaped like seashells. I brushed my hair back, applied a touch of lipstick. Not for anyone in particular, just because I wanted to look like someone who belonged. A young man greeted me in the lobby. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" "My name is Nancy Dalton," I said. "I spoke with Trina this morning." He checked a screen and nodded. "Yes, she's ready for you. Right this way." He walked too fast. I kept up anyway. Trina was younger than I expected. Late 20s maybe, polished, efficient, trying hard to look older than she was. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes stayed on her screen. "Good afternoon, Miss Dalton. Please have a seat." I sat across from her, hands folded on the desk. "I've suspended all your automatic payments per your call," she said, tapping on a keyboard. "Now we'll finalize the cancellations. I just need your signature here." She slid a document forward. "And here." I took the pen. My fingers trembled once, then steadied. The sound of the pen on paper was sharp and final. I signed my name like it was the first time I'd done it for myself. "Perfect," she said. "Would you like to receive notifications for any new requests to reinstate payments?" "Yes," I said. "And no one else is to have access to my accounts. No power of attorney, no linked cards, no exceptions." She paused. "I see there was an existing secondary access. Remove it." "Yes, ma'am." I leaned back, letting the words settle in the room. Trina typed swiftly, her nails clicking against the keys. When she finished, she turned the monitor toward me. "All cleared," she said. "You're in full control now." It was such a simple sentence, but something in my chest softened like a knot had finally untied. "Thank you," I said. "Is there anything else you'd like to do today? Update your will perhaps? We have in-house legal services." "No," I said. "But I'd like to set up a new account." "Certainly. What kind?" "A trust account for my grandson." Trina blinked. "Michael Dalton?" "Yes, his name only. I want to transfer a portion of my funds there, managed, protected for his future, but not a dollar of it goes to his parents." She hesitated. "That's entirely up to you." "It is." She nodded and began typing again. We spent the next hour going through forms, signatures, verification calls. It was the longest I'd spoken in days, but I didn't feel tired. I felt precise. When it was done, she handed me the folder. "Michael will receive notification within the week. You'll receive updates every quarter. And you have full authority to revoke or redirect the trust." I stood, collected my bag, buttoned my cardigan. Trina looked up. "Miss Dalton?" "Yes. I hope I'm not overstepping. But..." She hesitated, then smiled. Smaller this time, more real. That was one of the clearest, calmest reversals of control I've ever seen. I looked at her, at this young woman who didn't know my history, didn't know what it cost to sit in that chair. "Sometimes," I said, "the clearest choices come after the longest silences." She nodded and I left. Outside, the sky was pale with early afternoon. The breeze smelled faintly of grass and pavement. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching the folder against my chest like a shield. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. They started calling that night. It was Jenna first. Of course it was. She always called before Sam when something needed fixing, especially if it involved numbers. She left a message at 9:14 p.m., her voice light and falsely sweet, like she was reminding a neighbor to return a casserole dish. Hi, Nancy. I think there's a small issue with the water bill. Probably just a tech error. Would you mind checking your account? Let me know. Hope you're doing well. I didn't respond. At 9:37, Sam called. He didn't leave a message. At 10:02, a text. Did you change something with the bank? I didn't answer that either. I turned off the light, climbed into bed, and slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, it began in earnest. By the time I finished my coffee, I had 7 missed calls and 3 new voicemails. One from Jenna, the tone sharper now. Nancy, we're getting error messages on every payment. The mortgage, the school, even the trash service. This isn't funny. One from Sam. Mom, I need to know what's going on. Did the card expire or something? We've got late fees racking up. And one from Michael. His voice was quiet, uncertain. Hi, Grandma. Dad's pretty upset. Something about the bank. I don't really understand, but are you okay? Can I come over? That one I saved. Around 11, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen shelling peas into a metal bowl. I didn't hurry. Let them wait. When I opened the door, Sam was there alone. That surprised me. Jenna usually came to negotiations. Maybe she thought it would go better without her. Mom, he said, already exasperated. What the hell is going on? Good morning, I said, stepping aside. He walked in without waiting, same as always. Sat down at the kitchen table, arms folded, waiting for an explanation. I went back to my peas. Jenna tried to pay the mortgage and the account's blocked, he said. The gas company called. The tuition bounced. What did you do? I stopped. Stopped what? The payments. He stared. Why? Because they're not mine to make anymore. That's not how this works. I turned to him. No, Sam. That's exactly how this works. My account's my money, my choice. He stood up, agitated. Now you can't just pull the plug like that, Mom. We have obligations. Michael's brother has a school trip next month, the house insurance. I didn't sign up for those obligations. Yes, you did, he snapped. Every time you said yes. Every time you offered to help, you built this system. And now I've dismantled it. He looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't know. This isn't you. You don't know who I am, I said quietly. You know the version of me that always says yes, the woman who signs checks without reading the fine print. That's not me anymore. He paced the kitchen, rubbing his forehead. We can't just float all these bills. Jenna's work is seasonal. I have a conference coming up. If this goes on, you'll have to adjust. He stopped. You're doing this to punish us. No, I said. I'm doing this to remember who I am. Silence stretched. He looked at me, then really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I saw uncertainty in his face. Not anger, not entitlement, just a flicker of recognition. Like he was starting to realize that the foundation under his feet had always been me, and I'd moved. You should have warned me, he muttered. I warned you every time I bit my tongue. He didn't answer that. Just grabbed his keys, walked to the door. I'll talk to Jenna, he said like it was a threat or maybe a plea. You do that. When the door shut behind him, I sat down with my bowl of peas, the rhythm of shelling settling me like a prayer. It had begun and I wasn't afraid. I made the appointment with Mr. Heller the next morning. He's been my lawyer for over 20 years, handled the bakery sale, the first deed on this house, even drafted the trust fund back when I thought Michael's college savings might need protecting. We've never been friends, but we've always understood each other. He doesn't talk down to me, doesn't assume I need explaining. I appreciate that in a man. His office hasn't changed in a decade. Same dusty leather chairs, same photos of his grandkids on the bookshelf. When I arrived, he stood and shook my hand with a warmth that wasn't quite affection, but close enough. "Miss Dalton," he said. "Haven't seen you in a while." "I've been busy paying for other people's lives," I replied. "But that's ending today." He raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like I should make coffee." I handed him a folder, everything I'd pre-organized. Updated account statements, a summary of transfers, and a handwritten note titled Estate Adjustments, non-negotiable. He flipped through the papers. "You're not hesitating?" "No, David. I've done enough of that." He nodded slowly. "And your son?" "We'll manage." "And your grandson?" "He's the reason I'm here. I want to make sure what I leave actually reaches him." We spent the next 2 hours going over everything. He updated my will, removed Sam as executor, replaced him with an independent trustee, set the terms of the new irrevocable trust. Michael receives full control at 30, with stipends for education and emergencies until then, a clause for medical hardship, a clause for early withdrawal only with notarized justification. I wasn't about to hand over another cent just because someone said, "We're a little tight this month." Then came the house. I looked around his office while he drafted the quitclaim paperwork. I know Sam always assumed this house would be his. Mr. Heller didn't respond. He never comments on family dynamics, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. "I want it kept out of probate," I said. "If I pass, I want it to go to Michael directly, or sold and the proceeds added to his trust." He made notes. At one point he leaned back and asked, "Do you want to leave anything to your son at all?" I considered that for a long moment. Then I said, "No. Not out of spite, not out of anger, just because it was time to let the tether go." We signed everything. He gave me copies, explained the timeline, the next steps. I listened. I understood. When it was done, he stood to walk me out. "Miss Dalton," he said, "for what it's worth, I've seen a lot of families like yours. Most of them never do what you're doing." "What's that?" "Taking back the narrative." I smiled. "Good," I said, "because I'm not finished yet." Michael came by that Sunday. I heard his car before I saw it. That soft rattle of the muffler, the slight squeal when he reversed too fast. He always parks crooked, half off the gravel, just like his father did at that age. Some habits are inherited whether you want them or not. I was in the garden when he walked up the path, his shoes crunching on dry leaves. I didn't stand, just wiped my hands on my apron and nodded at the chair across from me. "Grandma," he said. "Michael." He sat, looked around. "Your roses are taller than last time. They don't need much to grow, just space and time." He didn't smile, just nodded, pulling at a loose thread on his sleeve. "I guess you know why I'm here. I imagine your parents sent you." "Sort of, but I wanted to come." That caught my attention. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Everything's gone to hell at the house. Mom's an estate. Dad's, well, he's quieter than I've ever seen him. Keeps walking around muttering about betrayal." I said nothing. "They told me you shut everything off. The money, the house account, even the school payments for Ethan." "Correct." "Why?" I looked at him. Really looked. His hair was longer than usual. His jaw a little sharper. He wasn't a boy anymore. And maybe that meant I could speak plainly. Because I realized I was buying a seat at a table where I was no longer welcome. He flinched just a little. "I didn't do it to hurt you," I added. "But I won't keep handing over pieces of myself just so people can pretend I'm not there." "I didn't know they said that," he murmured, "about the graduation, about you." "I know. I would have said something." "No," I interrupted gently. "You would have been caught in the middle, and that's not your place." He stared down at his hands. "It's just, I never thought it would get this bad." I mean, I knew things were weird, but I figured you were okay with it. You always seemed so quiet. Being quiet doesn't mean being okay. He nodded slowly. There was a pause, then he looked up. I got a letter from the bank. Emichim. About a trust in my name. From you. Yes. Why? Because I still believe in you. He looked stunned. Even after all this, you're not them. He rubbed a hand across his face. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I want to. I want you to know. I've been watching. I've noticed things for years, honestly. How Mom always asks for more. How Dad acts like he earned things that came from you. He paused. I used to think that's just how families worked, that parents keep giving and kids just take. But now. He shook his head. I don't want to be like them. I felt something shift in me then. Not joy exactly, but a kind of settling, like watching the last puzzle piece fall into place. You won't be, I said. Not if you keep asking yourself that question. He smiled. Small, tired, but real. Thanks for trusting me. I trust who you're becoming. He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was warm, strong, nothing like his father's. We sat there for a long while, watching the wind move through the rose bushes. No drama, no demands, just the sound of leaves and the quiet understanding that something between us had been repaired. Not everything needs to be said out loud. Some truths are best left to bloom on their own. They came on a Thursday, late afternoon, unannounced, with storm in their eyes. I saw the car pull up from my window. Jenna in sunglasses, arms crossed, Sam behind the wheel, jaw tight like someone bracing for battle. They didn't come to talk. They came to reclaim something they thought still belonged to them. I didn't flinch. I opened the door before they knocked. You're not going to let us in, Jenna said. I stepped back. I didn't say that. She breezed past me like steam off a kettle. Sam followed, quieter. That worried me more. They sat at the kitchen table. I stayed standing. You blindsided us, Jenna began. You could have at least had the decency to talk to us before pulling everything out from under. I wasn't aware I needed permission to use my own money, I said. Sam sighed. Come on, Mom. This is serious. You cut off every support line without warning. Michael's tuition, the mortgage, utilities. I'm aware. We have a life. Jenna snapped. We have 2 kids. You don't just get to vanish like that. I didn't vanish. I stepped back. Same thing. No, I said. It's not. There was a long silence. Then Sam said carefully, we just want to understand, that's all. No, I said again, but gently this time. You want to persuade, or failing that, guilt, but you don't want to understand. He looked stung. Jenna looked furious. You've always helped, she said. From day one, and now suddenly, you think you're the victim. I let the words hang. Then I sat down, looked them both in the eye. Do you know how much I've given you? They were quiet. I mean, truly, do you know? Do you know what your wedding photographer cost me? The house deposit? The new HVAC unit? The time I cashed in my annuity early so Ethan could go to a school where he wouldn't be too overwhelmed. Still silence. I've paid for 3 vacations I wasn't invited to. 2 cars I never rode in. Groceries I never tasted. Tutors I never met. Jenna shifted in her seat. Sam looked down. I'm not bitter, I continued. But I'm awake now. And I realize I've been financing your life to stay in your periphery. Not to be loved, to be tolerated. I won't do that anymore. Sam cleared his throat. This isn't how family works. No, I said. But it's how ours has. Jenna stood. So that's it. You're cutting us off like strangers. I stood too. No, strangers get a handshake. You're getting clarity. She scoffed. What happens if something happens to you, Nancy? Who makes decisions then? I already did, I said. The will's been updated. The house is assigned. The money's secured. Everything's legal. Sam stood now too. You changed the will? Yes. To Michael. To Michael. His face twisted. Not just anger but something more primal. Loss. The shock of entitlement denied. He's a kid. He's the only one who still sees me. Jenna reached for her purse. You'll regret this. No, I said. I regret waiting this long. They didn't say goodbye. Just walked out, the screen door slapping shut behind them. I watched their car drive off until the dust settled. Then I went back inside, boiled water, sat by the window with my tea. The sun was starting to dip. The house was quiet again. But for the first time in years, that quiet felt earned. The letter came on Monday. Not an email, not a text. A real letter. Thick cream envelope. Formal handwriting. I recognized it before I opened it. Sam's lawyer's office. He hadn't even written it himself. I sat at the kitchen table, letter opener in hand, staring at the name printed on the corner. Burford and Ellis Family Legal. I opened it without flinching. Inside was 2 pages, neatly typed, precise language, no emotion. This letter serves to formally acknowledge recent alterations to the financial agreements previously maintained between Ms. Nancy Dalton and Mr. Samuel Dalton and his family. Given the long-standing nature of said arrangements, we request a clarification of Ms. Dalton's intentions moving forward, particularly in regard to educational support and property distribution. We further inquire whether a mediated discussion might be scheduled to ensure mutual understanding and avoid future misunderstandings or public escalation. I laughed. Not loudly, just one short, bitter note. Public escalation. They were worried I'd embarrass them again, that I'd make noise, that I'd speak the truth too clearly, too openly. I folded the letter, laid it flat on the table, made tea. Then I pulled out a blank card from the drawer, one of the ones with watercolor birds on the front. Inside I wrote, Dear Samuel, there is no misunderstanding. There will be no meeting. There will be no further support, financial, emotional, or otherwise. I wish you peace and I hope you someday understand the weight of grace you were given. Warmly, Mother. I didn't sign Mom. I didn't write love. I sealed the envelope, addressed it myself, and mailed it before I could change my mind. That afternoon, I took down the wall calendar and tossed it in the bin. It was full of notes for other people's schedules. Car pickups, school holidays, mortgage reminders, all in my handwriting, none of it mine. I replaced it with a small oil painting Carol gave me years ago. A quiet field, one tree, no path. You sure you're okay? She asked when I called. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm quiet. She understood. Quiet for women like us isn't silence. It's freedom. The kind no one can take back. The last thing I gave away was the piano. It had been in the front room for years. Out of tune, out of use. Sam took lessons on it when he was small 2 years before he begged to quit. Said the keys made him feel anxious. I never forced him. Never made him finish things he didn't love. But I kept the piano because it filled the room, because it reminded me that at one point there had been music. Last week I called the local community center, asked if they took instruments. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. Does it still play? She asked. I don't know, I said. But it still has weight. She sent 2 young men with a dolly and a van. They were careful with it, respectful even. One of them, a boy with a shy voice and long eyelashes, asked if I'd played. Once, I told him. He smiled. My grandmother played too. Taught herself when she was 60. I nodded. It's never too late to make something sound again. When they left, the front room looked bigger, brighter. The floor where the piano stood had faded in a perfect rectangle. I didn't rush to cover it. Let it show. That evening Michael came by. He didn't knock, just stepped into the kitchen with a bag of groceries and 2 cans of soup. You always bring more than I need, I said. I don't like you eating toast for dinner. I like toast. He set the soup on the stove. We're making stew. Sit. And so I sat. I let him chop the carrots wrong. I let him season too lightly. I let him stir with a spoon that was too small. And it was the best dinner I'd had in years. Afterward we played cards. We didn't talk about Sam. We didn't talk about Jenna. We didn't talk about anything that required history. Just the now. Just the flick of cards and the slow settling of trust into the air between us. Before he left, he paused in the doorway. "You really okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. "For the first time, I think I am." He kissed the top of my head just like his father used to when he still believed I could fix everything. When the door closed behind him, I sat alone for a while. Not lonely, just full. Full of my own space, my own time, my own story. You get to an age where you stop explaining your choices. You stop asking permission to be whole. You stop apologizing for not being who people needed you to be when they stopped seeing you as a person. I am no longer invisible. I am no longer convenient. And I will not be quiet to make others comfortable. If you're still listening, if any part of this felt like your life, then hear this. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to say enough. You're allowed to be the one who walks away with your back straight and your name still yours. And if you ever feel alone in that choice, just know someone out here made it too. And she's doing just fine. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to reclaim your own narrative? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.